family. Welcome to day 35 of our Purpose Pursuit. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Today we are talking about God's strength in our weaknesses. We have understood that we are servants. We've understood that we have to think like servants. We have to act like servants. And of course, in fulfilling our purpose, we acknowledge that we have weaknesses, not only our strengths, but there are also areas of weakness. And so the author is taking us today through a journey on how we can experience God's strength in our weaknesses. The first thing he notes is that God can use not only our strengths, but our weaknesses. As long as we give him our whole selves, as long as we give him not just our strengths, but our weaknesses, he can use all for his glory. Because the Bible says that all things work for the good of those who love God. So not only do our strengths work for God's glory, even our weaknesses work for it as well. Our vulnerabilities are opportunities for us to experience God and for us to show forth the glory of God. The author states as well that our weaknesses, they encourage reliance on God. So when we are dealing with strengths, those are areas where we are naturally good at. Sometimes you don't even need the help of God to do the things that you're naturally good at, those things that God has endowed you with. But when it comes to your weaknesses, you struggle, you shy away, and you don't want to go forth. I think about the story of Moses here, who, even though he was a man who had spent a lot of time with God, he still shied away. He still said, "Oh, I cannot speak. I'm a stammerer." Because his heart was right. He had developed his character and humility and meekness, but he had the weakness where he was a stutterer. But he said, "Oh God, I cannot go." And God said, "I will send someone." So he found himself in a place where he had to rely on God. So our weaknesses ensure that we can rely on God. So God is a master planner. He did not just send us off on our own, but he still wanted that at the very end, even while we are executing our purpose, even while we are in that place of ministry, we still find ourselves in a place where we are like, "God, I need you." He says our weaknesses promote humility. Yes, because when you find yourself in a place where you know that I have this limitation, you're not going to be proud. It's going to put you in a place where you will realize that, oh, someone else, is good at this and I'm not good at it. So I cannot just boast, because the truth is that your areas of weakness and limitation are another person's area of strength. So reliance on God keeps you humble. It makes sure that you have that posture of humility where you are expressing yourself to God, and even with other people, it ensures that you don't just get too puffed up, but that you stay humble. You don't feel superior to another person, but you know that, hey, I also have this limitation. The author states as well here that our weaknesses, our limitations can foster community. When you are in a community and you are honest, because the key with the weaknesses and revealing the power of God is the vulnerability, being able to be open about those weaknesses, being able to, first of all, being open to God, to rely on his power, and then being open to another person, sharing our story with them, to lift them up, showing empathy to another person. So there is that sense of community where you understand that, oh, this person has struggles, I have struggles as well. And when we are vulnerable, when we are open to one another, it fosters that sense of community, that sense of trust, that sense of openness. And people can be encouraged by one another because they can see that, oh, I'm struggling in this area, but this person is good at this area. I can lean on them for support. And in whatever area they're struggling with, they can lean on me for support. It also fosters community where somebody might be going through something where you have overcome, or that you went through in that area of weakness as well. And you can be there to strengthen that person as long as you are truthful, you're honest, you're vulnerable. The author also states here that our weaknesses provide an opportunity to serve. So say you find yourself, I was in a life group one time, a couples life group. And the facilitators of the life group had gone through a lot of challenges in their own lives as couples, and they were now in that place serving other couples and just helping them walk through different areas, different challenges, and just using their own example, their own testimony to serve. So they gave themselves to serving in the church, and they gave themselves to serve in those areas where they have been vulnerable, they have been weak, they have fallen, but then they have seen the grace of God. So our weaknesses help to provide an area where we can serve the Lord. So don't just think that you will serve the Lord in your areas of strength, but even in your areas of weakness, you can still experience, you can still showcase the power of God. Accepting our weaknesses, it reflects faith in God's plan. Because when you don't just shy away from your weaknesses and you accept that these weaknesses, this is your life and you're struggling in one area or the other, you're submitting yourself. Because rather than trying to hide and trying to pretend and say, oh, I'm all this, I can do bad by myself and all of this, in reality, when you instead humble yourself and accept your weaknesses, you are showing that God made you, flaws and all, and you're trusting and accepting his plan for your life. He made me like this for a reason. I'm not going to use my weaknesses as a crutch, but I'm going to use my weaknesses, my areas of struggle, as a way to depend on him. Because today, in our day and age, a lot of people use their weaknesses as a crutch. They use their weaknesses to make excuses. I'm not good at communication. I'm not good at dealing with people. I'm not patient. I'm not this. I'm not this. Just take me like that. But the truth is that in those areas where we find ourselves weak, if we accept God's plan, we are actually going to see strength in that. Because weaknesses are able to unlock God's power in our lives. Apostle Paul said that I would most gladly glory in my weaknesses, for when I'm weak, then I am strong. Because again, it's all puts us to a place where we are relying on God. We are depending on him. God strengthen me. I know that I need to communicate with people. I know I need to be better at my communication. I know I need to be patient with people. And naturally, I'm not like that, but I pray that you will help me in my area of weaknesses. Empower me today to make sure that I am effective at my communication. I'm effective I'm patient with people. I am consistent. There's some people who are not consistent. So in every area where we find ourselves weak, it is an opportunity for us to experience the power of God. If we will turn it over to him, if we will constantly humble ourselves before him and ask for his help. And the last thing it says that self-reliance limits growth. We've said this before, that God resists the proud. He gives grace to the humble. So every time you're relying on yourself, every time you're telling yourself, I can do bad by myself, I got this, and I don't need anybody, I don't need any help, I'm good. You're putting self-reliance, you're being self-reliant, and that's going to limit your growth. Why? Because not only will God suppress you, you're just not going to be able to learn from others. But when you realize that you don't need to be self-reliant, but you can rely on God, then his power is going to be made perfect in your weaknesses. So self-reliance limits growth, but humility increases growth. So think about yourself. Think about your weaknesses. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy to have a community of people who can stand with you, whom you can learn from, whom you can be vulnerable with, because God did not design us to live in a silo. God did not design us to put boundaries around ourselves and say, oh, I cannot deal with you right now. I want to protect my bubble. No, God created man to have relationships. So you're always going to need people, and some people are always going to need you. You're going to need people who you have to share your experiences with, your weaknesses, so that they can be strengthened, who are going through the same thing. and say, oh, I'm all this, I'm not qualified, these are my weaknesses, but God is still using me. And then somebody else will be strengthened. So think about it and make sure that you are in a place where God can use you fully, flaws and all, not just your strengths, but your weaknesses as well, for His glory. And so the author leaves us with a question today. Am I limiting God's power in my life by trying to hide my weaknesses? What do I need to be honest about in order to help others? I remember yesterday I was talking about the fact that I got so overwhelmed looking at what other people were doing, and I missed focusing on what God wanted me to do. And so because of that, because I've learned through that, I am very intentional in making sure that I am not distracted by what other people are doing and staying consistent with what my assignment. And so you have to be vulnerable enough, and sometimes people don't understand why I can be very careful with my time, with the amount of things that come into my space, distractions and everything, because there is an assignment that I have to do, and I have to be focused, I have to be consistent, I have to stay true to what God would have me do. So I can encourage somebody with that who's maybe, overwhelmed by the things that are going on around them, and they're getting torn left and right, to give them my own testimony and my own journey. So I want you to think about your life like the author is saying, and say, am I limiting God's power in my life by trying to hide my weaknesses? What do I need to be honest about in order to help others? Someone needs to hear your story. Someone can be blessed by your story. You just have to be honest enough to trust God. Remember yesterday we said, the beauty about a servant's heart is that the servant focuses on God. He understands that he owes his allegiance and his accountability to God. So him sharing with you, when you have that servant's heart and you share with someone, you have to understand that as long as you're doing it for the glory of God, He's glorified. So that's even going to help with the struggle about being vulnerable. But as we grow, God helps us to have different levels of vulnerability, because sometimes you don't just want to put everything out there at once. God really helps us, but we have to depend on His power even to be vulnerable. I hope you enjoyed this chapter 35 on God's power in our weaknesses. I'm going to see you tomorrow on day 36 of our Purpose Pursuit. Is going to be amazing. I think we have 5 more days to go. So please like this video, comment, subscribe, share with someone. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.